All right, John, some days you get lucky, and I'm excited to have you today because big drop this morning from Tulsi Gabbard. I want you to set the table. What do you think about what she put out this morning, and what's the significance of it?
Yeah, well, listen, this is the work that the House Intelligence Committee did in 2020 under Devin Nunes that evaluated the tradecraft that was used to determine that Russia had meddled in the 2016 election, and specifically meddled to try to get Donald Trump elected in 2016. Now, that has long been disputed by people. The NSA director, Mike Rogers, long said, I didn't have that much confidence in that. Many other agencies had concluded the opposite in a September intelligence assessment in 2016. So this was something that was concocted at the end of the Obama administration in December to give Hillary Clinton a plausible excuse why she blew the 2016 election and lost to Donald Trump. The primary conclusion was that Putin specifically was working to get Donald Trump elected. And for years, my reporting has cast doubt on this because of two things. One, Vladimir Putin stopped all influence operations in the 2016 election at the end of September. If you're Vladimir Putin, you know Americans make up their mind in the last month of the election. If you're trying to help Donald Trump, that's when you would double down and try to help Donald Trump win. And Putin had always stopped his influence measures in that final month. And that always cast out in my mind and in the experts I talked to that this conclusion was bogus. But now we know it's bogus for another reason. Today's report, for the first time, gives specific information to show that the conclusion that Putin preferred Trump and was trying to get him to win comes from a passage or several passages drawn from the Steele dossier, a document that has been fully discredited and, most importantly, was already discredited by December 2016 when they're writing this analysis. When Barack Obama orders it, John Brennan runs it, lots of the intelligence community gets cut out of being able to weigh in on it. It's just the FBI and James Comey, Brennan, Clapper, and the NSA, all the other intelligence agencies, the 14 other intelligence agencies who had concluded Putin did not have a favorite candidate just a couple months earlier. They're cut out. And these three work on something that goes contrary to the evidence. And they draw this important conclusion in part from the assessment of Christopher Steele's dossier. In December 16, when they're doing that, the following things had already happened. The FBI had fired Christopher Steele because of misconduct as an informant. He was leaking to the press. The CIA had warned that Christopher Steele's network was infiltrated by Russian spies. So what he was perpetrating could potentially be Russian disinformation. The FBI had assessed every sentence in the Steele dossier by December of 2016 and concluded that none could be corroborated and many had been debunked. In other words, it was garbage intelligence. And despite that, John Brennan puts pressure alongside of Jim Comey to get this in the report and to drive this conclusion that will save the face of Hillary Clinton. Vladimir Putin did this, not Donald Trump. We now know that to be bad tradecraft. By the way, it violated the rules of the intelligence community directive that governed how you did assessment. So they knew they were violating their own rules when they did this.
So, John, the narrative has long been that there were two issues. One, that Donald Trump colluded with Russia, which right. I know from being on that campaign, it never was completely false and was manufactured 100%. During the campaign, as a side note, the narrative was we were too dumb to collude with ourselves. And then suddenly after the election, you were that good that you were colluding with Russia, whatever. And the Mueller report clearly cast doubt on that. The other narrative that you're talking about
more importantly, let me stop you for 1 second. This is important. First off, you were always right at the podium, Sean. That is something that history has shown to me. You told the American people the truth, and it was Adam Schiff and all of these other characters that were lying to the American people. But while the Mueller report cast doubt on it, saying they found no criminal conspiracy, John Durham went further. In 2023, his report said there wasn't ever, at the beginning, the middle, or the end of the investigation into Russia collusion, any evidence of Russia collusion. So Durham was even far more definitive in what he ultimately concluded.
Okay, but that's what I wanted to get to with, because there is this perpetual narrative that while the collusion piece, we're kind of willing to give you guys that you probably didn't collude with them, which again isn't even they won't even, most folks in the media won't even give you that despite the reality. I mean, just It's ridiculous. Okay, but what you're getting at, that this report today, declassified report from the Intelligence Committee in the House, and that the Durham report says, is that in fact, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want to make sure that I'm emphasizing this enough, that it is your conclusion, based on the report that was released today and what John Durham said and others, that in fact Putin did not 100% do things that would have benefited Donald Trump. That seems to be something the media won't concede.
Yeah, that's right. At least we can say he didn't intend to. That his goal wasn't to get Donald Trump elected. And remember, the conclusion of the report said he aspired to get Donald Trump elected. That's what Hillary Clinton has hung her shingle on for the last 7 years. Now, when you take this moment, you realize the House Intelligence Committee said that conclusion was bogus. It was based on bad tradecraft, predominantly the Steele dossier. All right, we get that. But now let's go back and remind people something else that we got recently to just show you how despicable this conclusion is in December. Let's take you back to July of 2016. 5 days before Crossfire Hurricane, the investigation is opened by the FBI and James Comey and Peter Strzok and a whole gang there. Barack Obama meets with John Brennan, the man who ultimately will drive the December 2016 conclusion. And he tells the president, we have an intercept, an intelligence intercept, indicating that Hillary Clinton has approved a plan to hang a fake Russian shingle on Donald Trump's campaign house. In other words, create a dirty trick to make it look like Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump were conspiring. So they know at the start that the allegation is manufactured for a political dirty trick. Then the FBI opens up. Nobody stops them. Then the FBI goes to the FISA court. Nobody stops them. They lie to the FISA court. Nobody stops them. Donald Trump defies history. He wins in November, and now they're going to try to hamper the post-election period for Donald Trump. And that's when they do this intelligence assessment. And they make it a conclusion in the assessment drawn from the materials that at the heart of the dirty trick that they first learned about in July before it launched the investigation. They're knowingly conspiring to mislead the American people. They have the knowledge that this is a Hillary Clinton-led dirty trick. And instead of doing the right thing, they corrupt the intelligence process. They hijack information that they know to be bad and use it to make something look real, an allegation to look real. And they do so over the objections of many of the career people that reported to John Brennan. Remember what Biden and Obama always said, we're always going to listen to the career people. Well, they didn't on this one. They didn't listen in July. They didn't listen in September. They didn't listen in December. And then let's take it one step forward, because last night Barack Obama seemed a little defensive when he put this statement out. Like, I have no idea how this could be a conspiracy. Let's put you in the room the 3 times that Barack Obama directly has his hands on this dirty little political trip. The first one is in July when he's told in advance Hillary's going to do this, and he doesn't stop it. He's the person that orders the December Intelligence Committee assessment. He's the one that sets that in motion. And why is that odd? Because in September, the intelligence community had already done an assessment, and all 17 agencies participated in that, and they came to the conclusion that Vladimir Putin was just trying to sow chaos. He wasn't trying to pick one candidate over the other. Then after that conclusion, the Intelligence Committee's September assessment looks brilliant, because in October, Vladimir Putin pulls back and doesn't do any more intervention in either way in the election. If you're really going to try to put your thumb on the election, October is the time, 16, that you would put your thumb on it. And then in December, with the September analysis affirmed, he still goes ahead and orders a new one, and they flip the assessment around based on the Steele dossier, and they cut out 14 intelligence agencies they knew would simply not agree to say something that outrageous. Barack Obama's there. Now, when that's done, Barack Obama has one last dirty trick in office to do. On January 5th, 2017, 15 days before Donald Trump begins his presidency, the first term, Barack Obama presides over a meeting with the FBI to figure out how they can continue an investigation of Mike Flynn, the incoming national security advisor, even though the FBI had already concluded Michael Flynn did nothing and they were about to clear it. That clearing of Mike Flynn is stopped, and they concoct an idea to go and interview him, see if they can trip him up into a lie and then go prosecute him. An FBI agent who attends that meeting with the president later writes notes saying, what is our goal? Was it to get to the truth or to try to trick someone into lying? Those notes capture what he witnessed Barack Obama participating in. That's why Barack Obama, July, December, January, that's why President Trump is so adamant that Barack Obama was in on this dirty trick.
Okay, I got a bunch of follow-ups.
Right.
First one is, it makes me feel like, to your point about Mike Flynn, is you remember Barack Obama during the transition told Donald Trump, the one person you shouldn't bring into your administration is Mike Flynn. Yeah. I'm starting to wonder if that's because he knew that Flynn could blow the whistle on all this.
Probably could. And if nothing else, could unravel. Yeah, right. Unravel everything that went back. Right. Mike Flynn knew the intelligence community inside out.
Okay. When you said that the intelligence used the word Putin aspired, is that an actual quote?
That's the word used. Yep.
Okay, because think about this for a moment, and I'm being serious, but it's an analogy that I know well. If I say I aspire to get back in shape,
yep.
Okay, that's very different than I'm getting in shape. I get up in the morning, I go to the gym, I'm eating better, right? I mean, I can aspire to be wealthy. There are certain things that you would then do to be wealthy, save money, invest it properly, right? There's a big difference, and you know this from all of your years as journalist. But I mean, that word to me is an important tell, because there's a vast difference between someone aspiring and someone doing. And if that's the exact word in the intelligence report that Putin aspired to, then okay, that's great. I want certain outcomes, right? So I want such and such to occur. Do I actually take steps to make that happen? I aspire to eat lunch. If I don't get off the couch and go get it, then it's nothing more than an aspiration.
And that's
hungry. I think.
Yeah.
What's that? Right.
But
my point is that if journalists are ignoring that word in their reporting, that to me is critical in understanding how this story goes. Because, and this gets back to the other questions, is the way you've laid this out, they knew, and this is the key thing that I want to make sure that I'm 100% on. They knew this narrative was false, and yet they clearly not only allowed it to go, but did things to not just aspire, to use that word again, but they actually acted to enact that narrative that Russia did influence the election.
Yeah. Here's why they use the word aspired. There's no way they could prove that Putin helped Trump. Why? Because he had withheld his best material on Hillary Clinton that could have taken her down and didn't deploy it in October. He stops all active measures right in the moment when you could best up. So,
and that's clear, right? But when you say that, he stopped all active measures. Yeah. If I go look at these reports, will it say that?
It does. It's in black and white. Yeah. And by the way, that was what was driving the September conclusion. In the end of September, the intelligence community was beginning to see a deceleration of Putin's election activity. So that's why they came to the September 2016 conclusion. Then it actually does stop. Turns out that the intelligence community, when you let it do its job, gets it right most of the time. And then in December, they have to create this politically hijacked conclusion. And they use the word aspire because there's nobody that could get away saying he actually did it. But they do if they said two things together. Putin interfered in the election and he aspired to help Donald Trump, that the media would smash that together, lose all the nuance of that, even though it was still inaccurate nuance, and just say, Vladimir Putin helped Donald Trump win the election, which is exactly the narrative that Barack Obama and John Brennan and others wanted, and that they went with on television. Just go watch the television interviews those first 4 months when you're on the podium, mercilessly getting beat down by reporters who don't know what they're talking about. That's the narrative that they were throwing in your face every day, and it was intended that way. This was a psyop. This intelligence assessment, which was supposed to be prepared for the most powerful office of the United States, the president, was turned into a psychological operation to deceive the American people so that Donald Trump would start his presidency severely handicapped. That's what we now see. That's what this report today makes very clear.
Okay, so put your hat on, not the Just the News hat, because you guys obviously cover that. Okay, but put your Associated Press bureau chief hat back on, your Washington Times. Why is, without shows like me, having people like you from Just the News on, or Real America's Voice, why is this? Is it that they're not presenting it well, or is it that it is entirely being ignored or covered up? Why is it that John Solomon's the only one that I can find that can break this down piece by piece and say unequivocally, this is what this is what it means, this is what happened? Why is it the press being complicit and saying, oh crap, we got caught, we're not going to cover it? Is it that they're stupid? What is it that's causing no one else to write this story?
Listen, I can't speak for the other news organizations, but if this was in any other time in American journalism history, this would be the frontline news in the New York Times and the CNN and ABC News and the Generation Report. It is a complete misuse of the Intelligence Committee. It looks like the Church Committee stuff that got exposed in the 70s. Journalists cared back then that the Intelligence Committee was abusing American civil liberties and American truths. This generation of reporters does it because they were complicitous in the formation of this narrative. They're the ones who went with the Steele dossier. They're the ones who went with the Alpha Bank, which we now know was one of the biggest jokes in American history. Not an iota of evidence that that was ever true. And by the way, coming from where? Hillary Clinton's campaign. These journalists were complicit, and it's impossible for them to give back the rewards. It's impossible for them to say, hey, we shouldn't have gotten Pulitzers for our Pulitzer-winning packages. Listen, in the last few months, I have been able to provide evidence that shows that specific stories in the Washington Post Pulitzer package were erroneous. Mike Rogers said it directly in an FBI interview. That's not what happened in the meeting. It's wrong. It's his word. It's wrong.
Oh, John, listen, here's the funny thing. On the January 5th meeting at Trump Tower, okay, I was in the meeting. Like everyone else, I've said this to reporters before with respect to the Steele dossier, the Annex A, all this stuff. Like, because I have a security clearance, when that meeting happened, General Flynn was in it, Trump was in it. I have described people, reporters like Jake Tapper, who have called me, and I said, well, I was in the room. This is exactly what happened. And they'd be like, well, I have 3 sources. And I'm like, well, guess what? I was there. There were only like 6 people in the room. I watched the interaction between Comey and Trump. I watched what he said to him. I watched him bring him to the corner. Like, I don't need your 4 sources because it doesn't make sense. And that's the thing, that they would rather listen to people describe what happened that fit a narrative than actually people who are in the room and can tell them the truth. And that's why I think this is fascinating.
You nailed it.
So let me, I mean, cause like I said, it wasn't like conjecture or I looked through a window. I sat there across the table from Comey, and I can tell everyone, here's where Comey sat. Here's what Trump said. I was there. And so when people describe to me what sources say, I go, guess what? I don't need, I am the source. But the broader, bigger point is this. Tulsi Gabbard referred this stuff to DOJ.
Yes.
And John, I said it yesterday on the show. This is personal for me. I sat for hours getting ready and then ultimately testifying in front of Mueller. It cost me and a lot of people a lot of money. I don't want my hopes to get all fired up. If people did everything that you just described in the way, then they need to be held accountable. And here's my question. And I know you might not be able to answer entirely, but like, what's the expectation now? Because Tulsi Gabbard sends it to DOJ. If this just gets pushed aside, then I'm sorry, I'm going to get really pissed off. But I feel like this deserves. So here's what I want to know. Based on your years of experience, what should happen? And more importantly, who should it happen to? Who should be held accountable?
Well, we have proven a political conspiracy occurred to hamper Donald Trump, to mislead the American public and hamper Donald Trump. Question now is, does it rise to a criminal conspiracy? I think a lot of people listening today are screaming, oh, yes, of course it does. That's for a grand jury to decide. Now, there's a problem. It's 9 years later, and many of these crimes are way outside the statute of limitations. So let me tell you what has happened that I think is the most significant event, and then how the Justice Department would normally handle this. We'll see if Pam Bondi does. My reporting says it does. Let me walk you through it. In April of this year, Kash Patel, who, by the way, is one of the authors on the
Yes.
House Intelligence
Devin
Committee
Nunes
report.
memo, yeah.
That's right. He knows it, right? He
Yes.
opened up what we call a grand conspiracy case. What does that mean? It takes a look at everything from the clearing of Hillary Clinton on July 5th, 2016, when James Comey had just gotten new evidence suggesting she shouldn't be cleared. He waves his magic wand and clears her. That moment, that day, through the Russia collusion investigation, through the Ukraine impeachment, through ignoring the Chinese intervention in the 2020 election, to Jack Smith raiding the Mar-a-Lago home of President Trump, and then bringing charges in Florida as one ongoing conspiracy. The federal government repeatedly misusing its intelligence and law enforcement powers to help the Democrats and to falsely harm Republicans, often with bogus allegations, as one conspiracy. When you do that, you get the advantage of what a RICO case against the mob or a drug cartel does. It allows you to go back and charge events outside of the statute of limitations and say, clearing Hillary Clinton and starting Russia collusion is connected to raiding Mar-a-Lago and indicting President Trump for classified documents because they knew Biden had the same problem, so they had to get ahead of it and create a problem for the Republicans. When they do that, the statute of limitation goes away. Now, a second problem for people who know how the system really works also goes away. If you bring this case in Washington, D.C. with a 92% Democratic jury poll, you're not getting a conviction. That's what John Durham found out the hard way. He had two pretty good cases. He lost both of them. But in this case, you can start with the most current acts, the acts that occurred in Florida, and impanel the grand jury in that city because they're the most recent acts, and then go back and charge the earlier there. That gives you a more neutral jury poll in Florida, more common sense jury poll in Florida, and gives the potential hope. Now, if that's how this is going to go, Kash Patel has already lit the fuse. The next step that the Justice Department traditionally does when it investigates a conspiracy like a racketeering conspiracy, where they're going after the drug cartels or when they're going after the mob in the 80s and 90s, you create a federal strike force. You take your best prosecutors, your best agents, your best intelligence analysts, you put them on one team and you say, go down and find all the overt acts and tell me if they're criminal. And when that happens, you then assign a prosecutor, you bring indictments. I believe Tulsi Gabbard's referrals, the recent releases by John Ratcliffe, the recent releases by Kash Patel's FBI, has opened the door for Pam Bondi to name a strike force. My reporting indicates that decision could be made as early as the next week. That's the way the Justice Department would handle any other case. If they name a strike force, this is getting serious. It means that Barack Obama, John Brennan, and James Comey are going to be treated like the godfathers in the mafia and the drug kingpins and the cartels, and they're going to face a strike force investigation. Now, at the end of the day, you have to prove it's a crime. You got to convince a grand jury before anything happens. But the naming of a strike force would be an amazing statement to everybody who's been pleading for accountability.
That's amazing. Because again, I think it speaks to the reality of this. Is it real? Is it just for show? Are you trying to distract us? But so in your opinion, what we need to look for is, does this strike force get named? That's what we should look for.
Yeah, that would be the way. Any other case like Kash Patel opened, that's how they would deal with it. The ball is in Pam Bondi's court. Let's see if she shoots the 3-point.
All right. Two things that I want to cover quickly with you. Sure. Number one, speaking of Pam Bondi's court, where are we, like in 60 seconds or less, just tell me, where are we going to go on Epstein?
I think at the end of the day, they'll ask the judge will release some documents, not release others, and we'll still have this hodgepodge of dissatisfaction. There's one place that the Trump administration could go that we don't talk about, the CIA. The CIA, my sources say, did have some interactions with Jeffrey Epstein. He wasn't an asset. He wasn't a knock. He wasn't a controlled agent, but he did have some interactions. That's the place that we don't have visibility that President Trump could do tomorrow. I think you'll see that happen in the near future. The judge will give us some visibility, but I think we're going to end up like the Kennedy assassination, talking about this for another 20 years and never being satisfied with what the answer is.
Do you admit, though, that this is a problem that they that was created by DOJ by giving people the impression that there was a list and more information?
Yeah, listen, Pam Bondi, who could potentially, be a major figure in the Russia collusion to Jack Smith continuum, she dropped the ball in this. I think she should admit that and just be honest about it. I misstated things. I didn't look close enough before I started talking to the media. I should have been careful. But I'll tell you where the real problem is and where the blame should go. It should go to the Bush Justice Department in 2007 and 2008. At that moment, they could have brought a major case against Jeffrey Epstein and the Johns who were using his system. And instead, they gave him a pass. They gave him a non-prosecution agreement, and they let the state cap him on the hand with a bogus little prostitution solicitation, 2 charges. The real fault for this, when Americans look back in history, they ought to look at the Bush Justice Department and say the last attorney general there, the U.S. attorney who handled this, they let the American people down, and that's where the blame should ultimately rest. But Pam Bondi did make some communication mistakes. She should own up to them.
Okay. The last thing I want to get to in like 30 seconds is, based on your experience in journalism, the narrative right now is that the only reason that Paramount and CBS are settling with Donald Trump for what 60 Minutes did to put their thumb on the scale of the election is because Trump's overseeing this Paramount merger and sale. I believe that, wow, why can't there just be a possibility that they screwed up, they interfered in the election, they put their thumb on the scale, and they're paying the price for it? 30 seconds or less, do you agree with me or not?
I believe the business side made a business decision and the journalism side made a journalism decision, and both are probably in the interest of the company. They made new rules at CBS to make sure transcripts always come out of interviews. I've always done that when I interview a president. They didn't do that. The journalism concession lets you know that they made a mistake on the journalism side. The business decision is a business decision.
I know. I just love the way the media covers this, which is,
it's true.
Well, it can't be because we screwed up and put our finger on the scale to influence the election. It's got to be a complete business decision. And they did this with Stephanopoulos and ABC. It's amazing how many times that same excuse. And again, Colbert couldn't have been fired because he was losing $40 million a year, making $16 million personally, and having a 200-person staff. It's got to be for Donald Trump's fault, not because your show sucked and you alienated half
Always
America.
a victim. Always a victim.
Always a victim. That's right. John Solomon, I love you and the work that Just the News does, getting these stories. Thank you for everything you do. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.